And we're starting things off with the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. So this is actually a case where the crew managed to make it back home, but it was a struggle. The Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, led by Sir Ernest Shackleton, aimed to cross Antarctica from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea. In August of 1914, the expedition set sail from England aboard the Endurance, a ship built to withstand the icy Antarctic waters, but in January of 1915, the ship became trapped in the pack ice of the Weddell Sea, and for months the crew waited, hoping for the ice to finally release its grip, but the Endurance eventually sank. And now the crew was stranded on drifting ice floes where they had to just camp. And when the ice finally broke in April of 1916, the crew sailed in lifeboats to reach Elephant Island. But they realized rescue was going to be unlikely there. So Shackleton and a small crew embarked on an 800-mile open boat journey to South Georgia Island, where there was a whaling station. After a grueling 16-day journey across the Southern Ocean, they reached South Georgia Island. Shackleton and a few men then trekked across the island's rugged terrain to reach the whaling station, and after several attempts, Shackleton successfully rescued the remaining crew on Elephant Island in August of that year. The Ken Boruc Air Antarctica crash. Bob Heath was an experienced Canadian pilot. He worked in the Northwest Territories, piloting scientists to ice floes to study polar bears, and during the fall he would pilot a twin otter all the way to Antarctica. This would be a 4-day-long trip. There he'd spend the entire winter piloting scientists to various research stations. When spring hit, he'd travel back home, making pit stops on his way to visit family in Winnipeg and Toronto. In 2013, Heath took off on another flight to Antarctica along with 2 other crew, and they were set to arrive at Terra Nova Bay Research Station, but they never showed up. 2 days went by with no sign of the crew until a search and rescue crew spotted the tail of the plane jutting out from a snow-covered mountain in the Queen Alexandra mountain range. The crash was determined to be unsurvivable. What makes the case even more distressing is that the bodies were never recovered, as attempting to do so would be incredibly dangerous. They had just crashed in too precarious a spot. Number 8. Flight 571. On October 13th, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, carrying 45 passengers and crew, including members of the Uruguayan rugby team and their friends and family, crashed into the Andes Mountains in Argentina. 27 of the 45-person crew had actually survived the initial crash, but they had limited food supplies, little warm clothing, and no way of communicating with the outside world. In order to survive, they resorted to pretty drastic measures. In the days following the crash, the passengers relied on first whatever meager rations they had, but as these supplies just continued to dwindle and hope of rescue began to fade, desperation set in. In order to stay alive, some of these survivors made the difficult decision to resort to They consumed the bodies of the deceased passengers who had died in the crash or succumbed to the harsh weather conditions, and after more than 2 months in the mountains, 2 of the passengers finally managed to make contact with 3 men on horseback, like days out from their initial crash landing site, and these guys ended up going for help, and finally, after 72 days in the wilderness, the remaining 14 survivors were rescued.
Next up at number 7 now, we have the pyramid. In November 2016, the internet was abuzz with talk of a pyramid that had been found buried in the Antarctic ice. Now before you dismiss this as nonsense, take a look at this picture. Yeah, that does look a lot like a pyramid. It was first discovered by the British Antarctic expedition of 1910 to 1913. They were stunned by its appearance and decided to name it the Pyramid, a name still used on geological surveys of the area. It's located in the Ellsworth Mountains, which is a range more than 400 kilometers long. The pyramid is one of the peaks of this mountain range. Naturally, you know what I'm going to say next. Many conspiracy theorists stated that this is proof of an ancient civilization that lived on Antarctica before being consumed by the ice and their existence covered up by today's governments. Of course, experts have dismissed all of this, saying that pyramids are not a complicated shape and are not an uncommon appearance in nature. What do you guys think? Next up at number 6 now, we have the lake. Lake Vostok is one of the biggest lakes on the planet. If you've never heard of it, Don't worry, that's probably because Lake Vostok is buried underneath more than 2 miles of ice in Antarctica. It's been covered in ice for at least 15 million years, but it's still liquid down there. The crushing layer of ice from above and geothermal activity below have ensured that. Its presence was first suggested in the 1960s by a Russian pilot who noticed a large smooth patch of ice above the lake from the air. Radar experiments by British and Russian researchers in 1996 confirmed the lake's existence. The lake is massive, 143 miles long, 31 miles wide, and up to 2,625 feet deep. In 2012, Russian scientists managed to successfully drill a hole down to the lake's water. They believe that down there is microbial life that is unique from everything else here on Earth, having been isolated for 15 million years. Now the search begins. Next up at number 5 now we have Allen Hill's 84001. In 1984, a team of US meteorite hunters discovered a Martian meteorite in Antarctica's ice. It was only about 4.3 pounds, but by 1996 it was causing quite a stir when a group of scientists claimed they had found evidence of microscopic life in the actual meteorite. Was this proof of life on Mars, or at least that life used to be on Mars because they thought it was fossilized? The media went into a frenzy either way. Even US President Bill Clinton gave a speech about it. The hysteria was because the strange chain structures on that meteorite looked like they could have been fossilized bacteria. There was also the fact that the meteorite broke off from Mars about 17 million years ago during a time when Mars had liquid water on its surface and carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. It seemed like life could have been around then. Eventually these claims were rejected though, and the features of the meteorite were explained without requiring life to be present. The meteorite now remains on display in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the dinosaur. In February 2019, the fossil of a new species of reptile was announced. It had been found by researchers in the Antarctic ice during a 2010-2011 expedition. It's believed to be an early relative of dinosaurs who lived in Antarctica millions of years before the continent drifted to its position over the South Pole and became uninhabitable for most complex life forms. Around 250 million years ago, Antarctica was covered in lush forests and rivers with many species of wildlife living there, including reptiles. The temperature is thought to have almost never dropped below freezing point. The scientists named the iguana-sized reptile Antarctanax shackletoni. Antarctanax translates to Antarctic King, and Shackletoni is in honor of the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton. Moving on to number 3 now, we have patchy mass. In June 2018, YouTube user Wow For Real made a video showing his discovery of a 14-mile structure buried in Antarctica. He made the discovery using Google Maps and described it as a patchy mass that you could easily see from outer space. He said he'd used Google Maps to search the entire continent before and had never found anything like this. He even pointed out that there were strange brush strokes over the mass, which made him think someone was trying to cover this up. It didn't take long before people started speculating about what was going on here. The YouTuber himself put forward the idea that if the brush effect was removed, perhaps we'd see some sort of giant UFO mothership buried in ice. In all probability, it's probably just a research facility, but we still don't know for sure yet, as this strange block still remains on Google Maps to this day. You can even go and see it for yourself. Coming in number 2 now, we have the wreckage. In January 2013, 3 Canadian men took off in a plane from the Amundsen Scott South Pole Research Station en route to an Italian research base in Terra Nova Bay. At some point during the journey, the emergency transmitter went off and a search party was sent out to find them. Bad weather hampered rescue efforts, and after 6 days they finally found the plane, but it was too late to save them. It had crashed into one of Antarctica's highest mountains. The rescue team were unable to get into the cockpit and were only able to retrieve some luggage. After 4 hours there, they determined it was too risky to stay any longer as the weather was taking a serious turn for the worse, and they were afraid of an avalanche occurring. It took 9 months before another team set out during Antarctica's summer period to retrieve the frozen remains of the 3 Canadian men. And finally, number 1 now, we have Endurance. We talked about the explorer Shackleton earlier. Well, Endurance was the name of the ship that he used to go to Antarctica in the first place. The ship was abandoned by Shackleton and his team when she was crushed by ice in the Weddell Sea off Antarctica, causing her to sink. In the years since then, there have been 3 expeditions that have tried and failed to locate Endurance. In 2018, that changed though. A team at the Scott Polar Research Institute launched a new search using more sophisticated technology, such such as GPS and drones to help them see possible routes in the ice. They also used an autonomous underwater vehicle. The video you're watching right now was released in February 2019, and according to what I've read, the search for Endurance is happening at this moment, looking for a ship thousands of feet beneath the frigid waves. I thought I'd end on this one because it's not been discovered quite yet, and that's kind of exciting. There's a lot more to uncover in the incredible world of Antarctica.
Kicking off the list at number 10, sea pigs. This list gets creepy and or crawly, but first we gotta ease into the Arctic Ocean. We gotta start off this haunting list with the sea pig. Look at this little guy, okay, the pug of the ocean. He looks like a stress ball with feelings. What's going on with him? They look like something that would be microscopic, but really they're 6 inches long, wide, around, big, I don't know, they're pretty large. They stick together, and I mean that in a literal sense. Sea pigs will travel in large gatherings. They live in the deepest, darkest depths of the ocean, so they're hard to find, really. Their mating routine is also still a mystery. We have no idea how they do it. And just by looking at them, we're like, no guesses, certainly no guesses from me. All we know is that they travel in groups, so I don't know. Sounds like it's a good time, at least. Lifespan and mating life, total mystery. All we know is that they eat decaying matter on the ocean floor. Kudos to the crew over at Mbari. The footage they find of these deep sea creatures is always fascinating. It's always so otherworldly over at Mbari. Are you guys hiring? I'm afraid of the ocean, but you know, I'll do some behind the scenes stuff, who knows. I'll just edit the weird fish. I'll put the text in. Like, what the f is this? Ooh. Number 9, rock bottom. A little over a year ago, scientists camped out in the middle of the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf for nearly 3 months. Why? All in the name of science. Yeah, we're getting cold. Geologist James Smith from the British Antarctic Survey slept in a tent. Who does this? Why do you choose to do this? James Smith, apparently. Here we go. He flew 5 hours out to this ice shelf. Him and his team had to melt 20 tons of snow in order to pour hot water through this ice shelf for 30 hours straight. When the team lowered their gear down through this 3,000 feet of ice, they couldn't get a sample of sediment from the ocean floor because they hit a boulder. I mean, the odds here alone, I mean, the entire seafloor is basically flat and they end up hitting this thing. At first they were frustrated, but this boulder that is 160 miles away from daylight is home to microbial malts, these alien-like sponges. These cylindrical sponges, possibly hydroids. I love seeing scientists get jazzed about stuff. They're like, oh, this rock had absolutely no business being here. Like, guy, you just melted through ice for 20 hours in the middle of Antarctica. I feel like it's the other way around. Imagine if those sea sponges could talk. They're like, oh, of all the spots, really? Please close that. The first shred of light, and it's just a big GoPro coming at them. They're like, what is that? Number 8, emperor penguins. They're as glorious as their name hints towards. I remember watching Happy Feet a lot growing up. I was really into penguins and tap dancing for a hot minute there. That movie changed the game. The main penguins here, they're all emperor penguins. Robin Williams' character, Lovelace, he's a rock hopper penguin with the cool, you know, the fluffy eyebrows. The other guys are all emperor penguins. The colorful orange necks, the OG characters, they're all beautiful. They're the largest penguins on the planet, and their breeding habits set them aside from the rest. Once the female lays an egg, I'm not gonna do sound effects for this whole process. I don't know why I did that. That's so stupid. Once the female lays an egg, she'll leave it with her mate for an incubation period, but she'll walk over 50 miles to the ocean just to get food. The mate has to fast for around 100 days just waiting for his next meal. Once in the water, these emperor penguins really go for it. They soar. They can dive up to 2,000 feet, which is far deeper than any bird in the animal kingdom. And they can hold their breath for around 20 minutes, which is incredible. Longest I've gotten is 3 minutes, but I'm coming for you, Mumbles.
At number 7 is Operation High Jump in 1946 to 47, which saw the USA sending the largest crew ever to Antarctica, over 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. Now, the official purpose was, in fact, a military one, all about preparing for cold weather warfare. But there are rumors that suggest that there was something more covert at play. The conspiracy theorists claim that Operation High Jump's real mission was to destroy the aforementioned secret Axis powers in Drawning Mud Land. The truth is, High Jump was primarily a military exercise, not a cloak and dagger mission. It was well documented in the press, as the expedition was accompanied by journalists, and official reports were released. While it might have been classified as confidential, it was never really a secret. No flying saucers chased them away. It was just the unpredictability of harsh Antarctic conditions that ended their mission early. Or so they claim. At number 6, Operation Argus Nuclear Bomb. bombs. So there were a lot of talk about these supposed secret bases in Antarctica, but let's delve into some facts here. You see, back in 1958, the US conducted 3 nuclear explosions during Operation Argus over the South Atlantic, not directly over Antarctica. These were high-altitude tests aimed at potentially disrupting radar, radio, and electronics of satellites and missiles during the Cold War. Now, the whole idea that these bases were meant to destroy the fascist bases in Drowning Mad Land is just a narrative not supported by evidence. In fact, if these nukes had gone off near Antarctica, the radioactive fallout would have shown up in ice from across the region, but no such peaks of radioisotopes have ever been found in those ice cores. Or so they claim. Moreover, 1958 was the International Geophysical Year, with international corporations and scientists from various countries in the region, making it highly unlikely that such nuclear tests would have gone unnoticed. At number 5, the Mustache Man flees to Antarctica. We all know which one. We all heard theories about how Germany's fascist leader secretly escaped his fate and lives on to this very day, but the details behind the story are shrouded in mystery. But there's one proposed method of escape with some circumstantial evidence to back it up. The tale involving U-boats, Argentina, and the frozen expanse of Antarctica. The U-530 and the U-977, 2 German U-boats, arrived in Argentina after World War II, sparking rumors of a clandestine escape mission. One of these Argentinian exiles claimed that these U-boats ferried high-ranking fascists, including the Mustached Man himself, to Patagonia or Antarctica. He even went as far as to suggest the existence of an Axis base in Antarctica called New Berchtesgaden. The problem is that no one had mentioned this base before, or the alleged convoy, before this individual's claims. Interrogation reports reveal that the U-530 was near New York when Germany surrendered, and the U-977 was off the coast of Norway. The journeys to Argentina, although slow and cautious, align with the time required for their separate voyages. Moreover, the idea that these U-boats travel to Antarctica in the dead of winter just defies logic. Winter storms, thick ice, and extreme temperatures make such a voyage nearly impossible. No evidence supports the existence of an Antarctic fascist base or a secret convoy. Or at least, that's what they want you to believe. At number 4, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. According to whistleblower Corey Goode, I don't know, there's a buried ancient alien civilization beneath 2 miles of ice, and it's been hidden from us for decades. This isn't some sci-fi fantasy, it's based on Gode's first-hand experience as a whistleblower from a secret space program. Allegedly. The story goes back to the 1939 Arctic German expedition. The ancient beings he refers to, called the pre-Adamites, were giants with elongated skulls, and their technology and remnants have allegedly been removed from the site, but only a select few knows what else was discovered. The timing of this revelation is quite interesting, as it might serve as a distraction from explosive global events, including allegations of trafficking among the elite. I don't know how that ties in, but okay. At number 3 on the list is Admiral Byrd's Crystal City. The esteemed US naval officer and explorer Admiral Richard Byrd was one of the first pilots to fly over both poles, who actually organized Operation High Jump himself, which, as I said, was the largest expedition to ever travel to Antarctica, with all kinds of ships, aircraft, and crew, in order to scout out locations for potential military bases. But during his explorations, Admiral Byrd allegedly came upon something highly unexpected. The following comes from not a public account, but from his own diary, which was discovered by his son after Byrd's passing, in which he recounts an extraordinary story. Upon encountering a large cave in the South Pole, through which he could easily fly his plane, Byrd steers his plane into an opening and flew under the earth. And as he flew within the massive cave, he encroaches upon an incredibly temperate and lush environment, not something you would expect in the South Pole. But that's just the beginning. He tells of how he sees a shimmering rainbow city made of crystal, and suddenly he loses autonomy of his plane as flying disc-shaped objects lead his plane to the ground, whereupon he's escorted to a being which he refers to as the Master in his diary, who tells Byrd that this alien species is massively disappointed with nuclear weapons and how they've recently destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, seeming to be really concerned with what's going on at the surface, telling Byrd that he hopes humanity will ultimately stop the use of atomic weapons. At number 2 is the Antarctic Pyramids. In 2016, rumors of a pyramid-like mountain circulated the internet, capturing the imaginations of many. Could it be the creation of an ancient civilization, or perhaps, cue the dramatic pause, evidence of extraterrestrial intervention? Whoa. The square-based pyramid is perched in the Ellsworth Range, standing around 4,000 feet tall. It's like 10 times the size of the pyramids of Giza. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, or should I say the tip of the mountain? Reports of plant and bacterial life dating back eons have also come to light, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, prehistoric, or should I say pre-human society once graced this frigid expanse, crafting not only pyramids, but also tending to vegetation. Bam! Proof of ancient aliens, or just a neat geological formation. I'll let you guys decide in the comments. At number 1 is the alien base. If this last story is to be believed, there's allegedly a secret alien base with advanced and unconventional weapons hidden in the icy waters of the Antarctic. According to a video uploaded by UFO hunters, a mysterious anomaly about 180 kilometers off the coast of Antarctica has been spotted. They speculate that it's not just some kind of hangar for a spaceship, but that actual aliens might be residing there too. Now this may veer a little bit more towards the conspiracy side rather than the good old urban legend, but hey, it's all in good fun. Some believers are advocating for an exploration to confirm the existence of these aliens, while others voice their concerns about potentially sparking an intergalactic war if we're not too careful. So whatever it is, let's just hope we tread carefully at this.
And we're starting off the list at number 10 with the Jenny. The Jenny was an English ship that left port on the Isle of Wight in 1822. Now, there isn't a whole lot of detail as to what happened to the ship, as the story has been around for years but has never been 100% verified. At some point during the journey though, the ship became trapped in ice somewhere in the Drake Passage, about a year after they set sail. The ship wasn't discovered though until 1840 by a Captain Brighton on a whaling ship called Hope. On the frozen Jenny were supposedly the bodies of the crew members, eerily well preserved because of the cold, frozen climate. And the captain's last log entry had been made on January 17th of 1823. Some stories go that Brighton's crew was then haunted by the ghosts of the Jenny, even seeing a ghostly image of the ship appear at night floating through the ocean. And at number 9, we have the Ningen. Cryptid time! Love my monsters. The Ningen is a cryptid that originates from Japanese folklore and modern urban legends. The term Ningen translates to human being in Japanese, but when used in the context of the cryptid, it refers to a mysterious and humanoid sea creature reported to inhabit the icy waters of the Antarctic. There are a couple different physical descriptions of the creature, but common features include a humanoid shape with a head, a torso, and like these long legs. Sometimes there's flippers involved. It's often large in size, around 20 to 30 meters in length. The Ningen is said to have smooth, pale, and rubbery skin, kind of like a beluga whale. Some accounts mention facial features, eyes, a mouth, while others describe it being completely faceless. The Ningen started circulating online in the mid-2000s when reports and alleged eyewitness accounts started being reported on the Japanese online forum website 2channel. These reports often claimed sightings by crew members of Japanese whaling vessels and fishermen in the Antarctic region. At number 8, we have the secret German base. So there's been this legend floating around for decades that the German forces set up this secretive military base in the frozen hell that is Antarctica, concealing themselves away from the prying eyes of the public in order to carry out advanced technological experiments and tests, or search for mystical artifacts that could aid them in their evil conquest. The idea that the SS were secretly experimenting with advanced technologies and high-tech weapons, or trying to find ancient, powerful artifacts buried deep beneath the icy wilderness of Antarctica is pretty insane, but so was the SS. The idea isn't even that they actually accomplished anything, just that there's a possibility that they tried. There are also some conspiracy theorists who believe that they discovered ancient alien technology buried in the ice, leading to secret research projects that may have even continued after the end of the war. Others believe that Antarctica could have been a refuge for Mr. H, a place where his dream of creating a superhuman Aryan race could continue in icy isolation.
Number 7, chinstrap penguins. Okay, from happy feet to slappy feet. Chinstrap penguins are the most aggressive of the penguin family. They're crazy, these guys are nuts. They're tiny, they have to be aggressive. I mean, look at them. They only grow up to 30 inches in length. They're so tiny, but again, they're so aggressive. They only grow up to 30 inches in length, so they have to be, you know? These ones don't tap dance, they actually crump battle you. Yeah, they embarrass you in front of you and your kin. Chinstraps are small and quick because their diet requires them to be. With krill waiting 50 miles offshore, chinstrap penguins have quite the commute. Their thick skin is also quite literal. Their blubber keeps them warm during these long commutes. As long as no leopard seals show up, their commute is pretty smooth sailing. Number 6, the sea spider. Okay, we had a few ha-has with the penguins, now it's time to get weird. Now we know why we're here. The sea spider, thankfully, is not an actual spider. It just looks like one, kind of like daddy long legs. This is a daddy cold legs. It's a marine arthropod, and the reason it's so haunting to look at is because of polar gigantism. Many species have this. Their climate being so harsh, lack of nutrients, lack of sunlight, friends, family, etc. Scientists believe it's because sea spiders have slowed down their metabolism, so much so they require a small amount of oxygen to survive. So over time, the oxygen around these sea spiders turn them into like Captain America. They just juice them up. They take on way more than they're adapted to. And in turn, we get giant, terrifying sea bugs. Nice. Number 5, scale worms. Upon first glance, again, scale worms look microscopic. They look like tiny bacteria that are covered in scales. Hairy, weird, gross scales. They're pretty horrifying to look at. These guys are actually 8 inches long on average, so they're not tiny at all. This is what they really look like. The Antarctic scale worm is covered with elytra, these natural bristles, but the most distracting feature here has to be its mouth, head, mouth thing, yeah. This part on its mouth can literally fully retract. It can go inside out, yeah. It can suck its own mouth inside of its body, and then when it's time to eat, it pops out and then claws its prey to pieces. Horrible. I saw a video of it, I almost threw up. We went from happy feet to retractable mandibles. Cheers, that's how we do it here on MA. Number 4, glass sponges. Antarctic glass sponges. They don't get their name because they're translucent, they get their name because their skeletons contains silica, which is a literal component of glass. How neat is that? Back in 2013, a massive discovery took place. Scientists figured out how these glass sponges grow in size. Well, they figured out that they do grow in general. As our ice shelves slowly disappear, the numbers of glass sponge sightings, they increase. They don't hunt down prey at all, obviously. They spend their entire life quite still, just eating the leftovers that happen to drift along their merry way. Their food was so sparse as well, for a long time it was fully believed they couldn't possibly grow, because what would they possibly eat? The more we learn about glass sponges, the better, because these little guys tell us a lot about climate change. We're like, how is it happening? What's going on? Nothing's happening. They don't talk much, they're really quiet, they don't have mouths or eyes. Number 3, the springtail. Also known as the elephants of Antarctica, springtails are hexapods. They're exclusively land animals, whereas penguins, they sometimes, bop and swim. These guys are only on land. They're tiny as well, they measure up to about 1 millimeter on average. They look like earwigs almost. Ice earwigs that eat bacteria. Horrible. They got a big old butt too, so you're probably gonna notice if you see one walking by. They live on average 1 to 2 years, and they produce glycerol, which helps them, not freeze to death. That always helps. Antarctic springtails live longer than springtails in other parts of the world because the frigid temperatures, again, slows their metabolism down so much they can just survive off basically nothing. They're not immortal, but as far as ice insects go, they're close. They're pretty mighty. Small but mighty. Number 2, the Hoff crab. When these creatures get their names, it's often in relation to their appearance or their super ability. The immortal jellyfish ages in reverse. The glass octopus is otherwise see-through. The Hoff crab gets its name because it looks hairy, like David Hasselhoff. He's hairy as well. Yeah, David Hasselhoff just tweeted the Hoff crab with this photo. So random. Imagine following him and you see this, you're like, what's going on? Why? We love it. The scientific name later given was Kiwa tyleri, appropriately named after its discoverer, Paul Tyler from Southampton University. Found in the East Scotia Ridge on the Southern Ocean, where the water is too cold for the Hoff crab, these guys are just covered in bacteria, hence their hairy Hoff look. Because it spends so much time staying warm near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. The guy literally just sits around a deep sea campfire just collecting ice cold bacteria. What a wild life. He's a deep sea hairy caveman, essentially. When it comes time to eat, the Hoff crab just scrapes off a little bit of bacteria from any part and then just gives himself more food. He gives himself a little haircut salad. We love those. And finally, coming in number 1, the colossal squid. Not to be confused with the giant squid, those are similar but smaller. Still terrifying, but more petite. As its name gives away, the colossal squid is much larger. They live in the darkest, coldest depths surrounding the waters of Antarctica, and these squids, on average, they're around 46 feet in length, with the females being the largest of the species. The biggest and baddest, of course. They have large tentacles with suckers equipped with razor hooks, so whatever it does grab, it's certainly not letting go anytime soon. Its diet consists of large fish, and when I say large, I'm referring to, 7-foot long Patagonian toothfish, not a goldfish. They're colossal, and they try and fight whales sometimes. They're crazy. They have no regard for the size of others. They're gonna fight anything and everyone. They're more often than not marked up, suggesting they've been in a few deep sea tussles. On top of being magnificent, they're quite mysterious. Only 2 specimens have ever been collected, with the second being recent in 2014. Some believe this is the closest living relative to the Kraken. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Sound off below. Either way, I'm gonna go throw up. I never want to see any of these in real life. Awesome.
Starting off number 10 now, we have Blood Falls. In 1911, scientists noticed something pretty horrifying around cliffs in Antarctica. It looked like some of them were oozing blood. It shocked the world. What could possibly be producing these rivers of blood? Was there something hidden within the ice that we didn't know about? Something that could only exist in these hostile alien conditions of Antarctica? At the time, scientists believed it was being caused by algae discoloring the water. The hypothesis was never verified though. In 2017, the mystery was finally solved thanks to research by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The deep red coloring is due to oxidized iron in brine salt water. It's essentially the same process that makes iron go dark red when it rusts. When the iron-rich salt water comes into contact with the oxygen on the surface, the iron oxidizes and this colors the water and ice red. I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief now that there isn't some hellish blood monster living under the Antarctic ice. Next up at number 9 now, we have the abandoned huts. On November 1st, 1911, British explorer Robert Falcon Scott departed from Cape Evans on his Terra Nova expedition, trying to become the first human to reach the South Pole. They made it to the South Pole, but sadly they found they had been beaten to it by a group of Norwegians led by Amundsen. The team faced unusually bad weather on their return journey and tragically died before they could even reach their hut with all of their supplies. The hut was used by another team in 1917, but after that it was abandoned. For years it was slowly covered in ice and snow until 1956 when a US expeditionary party dug it out. It was found to be in a remarkably well preserved state. The beds were as they left them, so too were their scientific instruments. Canned food still sits on the shelves. A London newspaper from that time is on one of the desks. The frozen and dry environment of Antarctica have preserved a lot of things, but decay does still occur there. Visitors to the Discovery Hut discovered the now century-old seal meat as smelling quite rancid, and some people thought that the huts themselves are now affected by fungal decay. Moving on to number 8 now, we have bacteria. In 2008, scientists managed to revive bacterium extracted from Antarctic ice that was 8 million years old. You heard me right, 8 million years. Right away, many people became concerned. Was this a danger? It sounded a bit like the start of a Hollywood movie where the bacteria goes on to wipe out the whole of humanity. The scientists assured the public though that there was nothing to worry about and that the bacteria was unlikely to cause human diseases. You'll note that they said unlikely though. It's not definitely impossible. This bacteria is so old that when it came into existence 8 million years ago, the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees was alive on the planet. So, how are these things still alive? Well, Paul Falowski of Rutgers University described the bacteria as having been in a suspended state of animation for 8 million years, and that global warming melting glaciers could result in the release of more ancient organisms into the sea.
Number 7, the UFO crash landing. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL who had worked in the South Pole revealed some intriguing information to an investigative journalist named Linda Moulton Howe about an alien structure he once visited. He wished to remain anonymous as this information was highly classified. In August of 2003, this individual and his team had been tasked with a highly classified objective under the guise of a research reconnaissance mission. They arrived at their destination where they found a large dark structure protruding from the ice. There were doors on it, these big square slabs cut into the structure that when you push on kind of receded into the building, opening up into this long hallway. The inside of the structure was lit green by an unknown source, and adorning the walls were strange hieroglyphics. But they didn't resemble any hieroglyphics seen here on Earth. This is a pretty outlandish story. impossible to prove, but hard to discredit completely because it's just hearsay, really. But it is fascinating. Plus, Antarctica is one of the most unpopulated places on Earth. It would be a good spot for little green men from space to operate without the presence of prying eyes. So let's stay on the topic of UFOs for a minute and discuss another possible UFO crash landing in Antarctica, this time spotted with satellite images. YouTube channel Secure Team 10 shared a video back in 2018 zooming close in on a small island just off the coast of Antarctica, which seemed to show a long, sharp mark in the snow as if something had crashed and then skidded along. Now, this island has the exact same environment as Antarctica. It seems to be a piece of it that broke off and floated away. So it's inhospitable, totally void of people. So what is this object? The narrator describes it as cigar-shaped, covered by mounds of snow. Whatever the object is, it's also very large, and the trail it left behind is almost 1,000 meters long. The trail behind this mysterious object leads to a mountain, and there's debris that seems to have been pushed out at the base. It looks like as if the object flew down and crashed into the mountain before skidding along the ice where it now sits. Part of me thinks there could have been an avalanche or something on the mountain, and maybe this is just a piece of rock that slid out extra far. I don't know. What do you all think, though? At number 5, we have Scott's Hut. Back to the haunted realm now. In 1911, 25 men led by Sir Robert Scott departed from this hut in Cape Evans on an expedition to the South Pole, an expedition they would never return from. The hut now stands just as it did all those years ago. There are belongings laying around, scientific equipment, even the frozen penguins the group had been studying remain on the outside of the hut. It's almost completely frozen in time. And as intriguing as it would be to give this place a visit, staff and visitors do claim to have an odd feeling when stepping inside it. There's a sadness about the place, an emptiness, a place that was so full of life, with daring explorers about to begin an epic journey, never to come back. Only maybe they did come back. It's no surprise that with an eerie history like that, some folks believe the hut to be haunted. Ghostly whispers, shadowy figures, a sense of not being alone. These are just some of the things guests have reported during their visits. Number 4, the giant hole. In 2017, researchers in Antarctica observed a massive polynya, a large area of open water within the sea ice, suddenly appearing. It was already massive, but things got even crazier when the polynya expanded at an unprecedented rate, increasing in size by more than 8 times within just a few weeks. The discovery was made in Weddell Sea, an area known for its harsh freezing conditions. Polynyas are not uncommon in Antarctica, but their sudden and substantial growth is a more rare occurrence. That puzzled the researchers. These gaps in the ice are usually maintained by complex processes, ocean currents, temperature variations, but the rapid expansion of this particular one challenged existing scientific understanding. Researchers and climate experts were left with a series of questions. What was causing this rapid expansion? Was it related to climate change, natural variability, or some other unknown factor? And the scientific community set out to study this event with the use of satellite imagery, ocean sensors, and computer models. But the prevailing theory is that the polynya was caused by intense cyclones. Alright, next let's talk about all the military presence in Antarctica. What's going on there? Let's start by going all the way back to World War II. There have been rumors for decades that Mr. H himself, the dictator of Germany, might have established a covert base in Antarctica. As for what they were doing there are lots of rumors, but the SS were super into mysticism and the occult, always in pursuit of ancient artifacts that they believed had powers that could aid in their conquest. Pretty wild, but maybe they were after something hidden somewhere in the frozen tundra. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent a huge fleet to Antarctica, and many believe that they had been tasked with destroying this secret German base. As for more contemporary military activities, who knows what's going on? Just imagine vast hidden research facilities buried beneath the ice, or cutting-edge technology being tested in the harshest conditions imaginable. Conspiracies suggest everything from advanced weaponry to secretive scientific experiments related to climate change or extraterrestrial phenomena. Who knows? And number 2 is Deception Island. Deception Island, nestled in the icy expanse of Antarctica, holds a chilling history that goes beyond its freezing temperatures. Once a bustling whalers station, remnants of this grim past still linger in the form of whale bones strewn across some of its beaches, a reminder of an industry that relentlessly hunted these beautiful creatures. When the Great Depression hit and oil prices plummeted, the whalers station was abandoned, only to be repurposed later as a British World War II base. Now today, visitors to Whalers Bay, a landing site on this island, have shared tales of their experiences. Some have reported witnessing eerie apparitions, strange orbs of light. Some have even claimed to hear disembodied voices echoing across the ice. In 2009, when the crew of the American TV show Destination Truth ventured to the bay, they captured unexplained bangs and the unsettling sight of a shadowy figure roaming among the decaying ruins. The crew even captured a thermal signature in a window and an SOS signal emanating from one of the abandoned shacks. But finally, we have the theory that Atlantis could have been located deep beneath the ice of Antarctica. According to Plato, Atlantis was this advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished overnight. Now, when we think of Atlantis, we usually picture it in the sunny Mediterranean, not, buried under all that ice down south. But here's the twist. Antarctica wasn't always an icy wasteland. Millions of years ago, it had forests and a much milder climate. So some folks propose that Atlantis could have existed in Antarctica before it froze over, or some other ancient civilization. They point to satellite images showing peculiar shapes under the ice, speculating that these could be remnants of the lost city. We already talked about a pyramid earlier. That could have something to do with it. Scientists, though, of course, remain skeptical. They've been studying Antarctica for years, haven't found any concrete evidence to support this idea, but it's fun to think about. Could that pyramid shape, again, possibly play into this? Who knows?
At number 10 is the Axis Powers Base. In the late 1930s, the fascist party from World War II stirred up quite a bit of intrigue with their Arctic escapades. But what was really going on? Well, it all started with a German expedition from December 1938 to April 1939 on the ship MS Schwabenland. Their mission was to claim a slice of Antarctica known today as Dronning Maud Land. That's gonna come up multiple times throughout this video, so remember that. On paper, their main motivation of this expedition was to protect the German whaling industry. Or so they claimed. The Schwabenland was packing some cool gear like a steam catapult and 2 Dornier wall flying boats. These babies were used to snap pics of a whopping 600,000 square kilometers of the frozen landscape. They dropped a bunch of aluminum flags from the plane and left some on foot expeditions, but none of these flags have ever been seen again. The Germans swooped in and officially claimed the surveyed land as New Schwabenland in August of 1939, but then World War II came along and spoiled their base building plans. Or so they claimed. The German claim to this slice of Antarctica was dropped in 1945, and there's no hard evidence of them doing much else in Antarctica during World War II at this time. Or so they claimed. At number 9 is the British Operation Tarabin. Tarabin? I don't know. Antarctica might seem like the last place you would expect to see wartime secrets, but during World War II, Britain had some hidden plans on ice. While the Germans weren't chilling out there, allegedly, Britain was in fact making moves in Antarctica. They staked their claim in Antarctica to fend off Argentina and Chile's claims, both of whom were buddy-buddy with Germany. In 1944, Operation Tarabin kicked off, where the British occupied their slice of the Antarctic pie. They said it was about hunting down German ships, but it was more than that. They set up a secret base in frozen desolation, and these bases weren't bustling metropolises either. They were small manned outposts, but they weren't just sipping on hot cocoa out there. They gathered important intel and conducted scientific research. After the war, the chill research vibe continued, evolving into the British Antarctic Survey. Now, with both the Allies and the Axis powers holding a stake in Antarctic land, it was only a matter of time before this Cold War got freezer burn. But before I get into this secret Antarctic battle, if you're enjoying this video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Modenheim 1. It's often rumored that during Operation Tabarin, the Brits set up a base, Modenheim 1, in Dronningmod land during the World War II to keep an eye on the supposed Axis base. But conveniently, there are no public records to prove of Modenheim 1's existence. Now, the fascists allegedly attacked Modenheim 1 in July of 1945, followed by SAS-led retaliatory missions from October to December of the same year. But for as fantastic as this Antarctic covert ops story is, there's not a lot to back it up. You see, on paper, Operation Terrabin wasn't about secret wars. It aimed at a British scientific presence in the British claimed sector of Antarctica. Plus, there's no indication of SAS presence in Antarctica during the war. So the tales of the hidden battle and mystery bases are mostly just myths, my friends. Antarctica was more about scientific exploration than covert ops during those times. Or so they claim.
In at number 7, we have the Swedish Antarctic Expedition. The Swedish Antarctic Expedition of 1901 to 1904, led by Otto Nordenskjöld, encountered a crisis when their ship, which was actually called the Antarctic, got stuck in the ice of the Weddell Sea in 1903. They were unable to free the ship, forcing the crew to abandon it. Stranded on the ice, they survived by hunting seals and penguins, melting ice for water, and constructing a basic shelter made out of stone. They waited for rescue for almost a year, and then in November of 1903, the crew managed to launch lifeboats and reached Paulet Island, finding supplies from a previous expedition. They had to camp out for yet another whole winter before finally being rescued in November of 1904 by the Argentine corvette Uruguay. A happy ending, but a failed expedition. 2 winters spent anywhere but indoors, especially in Antarctica. That is a disaster to me. Next on the list is the Mount Erebus disaster. On November 28th, 1979, Air New Zealand Flight 901, a sightseeing flight, crashed into Mount Erebus in Antarctica. The flight was carrying 257 passengers and crew eager to view the Antarctic landscape, and the crash was caused by a navigational error. The flight crew were relying on incorrect coordinates programmed into the aircraft's computer system, believing they were flying over McMurdo Sound, a large body of water, when in reality, they were headed directly towards Mount Erebus, an active volcano. Poor visibility due to overcast conditions and whiteout snow also made it really difficult to visually identify the mountain in time to avoid crashing into it. Upon impact, the aircraft disintegrated, taking the lives of all 257 people on board instantly. The Comandante Ferraz Station fire on February 25th, 2012 at the Brazilian Antarctic Research Station in Antarctica. A deadly fire broke out. The fire resulted in the loss of 2 lives. The fire broke out in a machine room at the station, quickly spreading due to the intense winds and the flammable materials inside. 69 people present at the station were evacuated, but tragically 2 members of the Brazilian Navy lost their lives during the incident. The fire completely destroyed a significant portion of the research station, laboratories, living quarters, as well as valuable scientific equipment. It's believed that the fire broke out after an explosion caused by a short circuit. Next, we have the disappearance of Carl R. Disch. Carl Robert Disch was an ionospheric physicist working for the National Bureau of Standards. He disappeared near Byrd Station, Antarctica on May 8, 1965, and is presumed dead. Disch was stationed at the radio noise building of Byrd Station, where he conducted ionospheric studies. On the morning of May 8th, he left the radio noise building to return to the main station complex. When he failed to arrive at the main station within a reasonable time, though, a search was launched. They spotted his trail at first, but the search party had to return to the station to refuel, and by the time they returned, his trail had been covered by drifting snow and he was never found. They tried to increase the visibility of the station. They fired off flares. They used extra floodlights, but there was still no sign of him. And what made things even worse was the temperatures had dropped as low as -42. The search was eventually called off on May 14th, and Disch was declared presumed dead. He was only 26 years old. Number 3, the Academic Shokalsky. The Academic Shokalsky, a Russian research vessel, became trapped in Antarctic ice on December 24th of 2013. Merry goddamn Christmas. The ship was carrying a team of scientists, journalists, and tourists who were on expedition to retrace the steps of Australian explorer Douglas Mawson. The situation was caused by a combination of rapidly changing weather conditions and large ice flows. And the ship's crew tried to navigate through the ice, but the surrounding ice pack just closed in around them, trapping the vessel. They tried to break through the ice, which didn't work, so they tried waiting for natural movements in the ice pack to create openings, but no luck there either. The passengers and crew were stuck for over a week until finally a Chinese icebreaker, the Zhulong, and Australian icebreaker, the Aurora Australis, were sent to assist. And after several days, the passengers and crew members were airlifted to safety by a helicopter from the Zhulong, while the remaining crew stayed aboard the ship to sail it back home once the conditions were more favorable. Eventually, a break in the ice did allow for the ship to maneuver and escape on January 7th, reaching open water and ending the entire ordeal. The tragic incident involving Jeremy Bailey, David Wild, John Wilson, and John Ross occurred in 1965 near the Heimfort Mountains in East Antarctica. So this group was traveling on a muskeg tractor and its sledges with a team of dogs running behind them. 3 of the men were in the cab of the muskeg, and John Ross sat on the sledge at the back, close to the Huskies. Bailey was driving, Wild and Wilson were scanning the ice ahead. At around 8:30, the dogs alongside the sledge suddenly stopped running, and the sledge came to an abrupt halt. Ross realized something was off and turned to find that the muskeg had disappeared from view. He ran up to the first sledge to see that it had wedged into the top of a large crevice that ran across their path. The muskeg had fallen about 30 meters or 100 feet into the crevice, with its tracks wedged against one ice wall and the cab flattened against the other. So Ross called out, but there was no response from the men inside the cab down there. After some time, Bailey's voice was actually heard, confirming that Wild had died, and both Bailey and Wilson were seriously injured. Ross tried descending into the crevice to help, but it was pretty treacherous. Bailey told Ross, don't come down here, don't risk it. But Ross started descending anyway. It was clear that Bailey was also severely injured, unable to move. Ross continued his attempts to reach them, but Bailey eventually stopped responding. The last sound Ross heard from the crevice was a scream from Bailey. Finally, we have the Terra Nova Expedition. The Terra Nova Expedition, led by Captain Robert Falcon Scott, was a British Antarctic expedition that took place between 1910 and 1913. The primary objective was to be the first to reach the South Pole. And in January 1911, the expedition established its base, known as Cape Evans on Ross Island in Antarctica. Over the next 2 years, the team conducted scientific research and made some attempts to reach the South Pole, but on January 17th of 1912, after a long and brutal journey, a 5-man party led by Scott finally reached the South Pole, only to be met with a Norwegian flag planted in the ground. Yeah, a Norwegian expedition led by Roald Amundsen had beaten them to the punch just over a month earlier. There's a photo online of the group just after they'd reached their destination and made that disappointing discovery. It's pretty rough to look at. And now, completely disheartened, the team began their long journey back to Cape Evans, but they would never make it back. They faced increasingly harsh conditions on their return journey. By late March of 1912, they were caught in a fierce blizzard, unable to continue their journey, and the men were just stuck in their tents basically. They struggled with frostbite, complete exhaustion, and starvation. Scott and his 2 remaining companions, Edward Wilson and Henry Bowers, died in extreme cold and exhaustion in their tent, just 11 miles from a supply depot. And we're kicking off this list with pyramids. So a couple years back, satellite images revealed a mysterious triangular formation in Antarctica's desolate landscape. When the images hit social media, debates and speculations about the origin of this quote-unquote pyramid began, the pyramid shape appeared in satellite images of the Ellsworth mountain range located in the southern reaches of Antarctica. It seemed to have a striking resemblance to the dimensions of Egypt's iconic Great Pyramid of Giza, measuring 2 kilometers in each direction from its square base. And as these images circulated on social media platforms, the conspiracy theories began to flow. Now, scientists attribute these formations to natural processes and optical illusions, but perhaps there's a deeper secret being hidden from us in the cold, inhospitable terrain of Antarctica. Was there some ancient civilization that used to call the South Pole home? Did a group of beings from somewhere beyond our planet construct it? I don't know, I'm just here to ask the important questions. And now I'm here to tell you that if you are liking our channel so far, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? We have awesome videos coming at you on the daily, plenty to see. Don't miss out. Do that right now. Next up, we have the ANITA discovery. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a sophisticated scientific tool in the form of a high-tech balloon operated by NASA, floating above Antarctica. Its mission is to track subatomic particles generated by the interactions of high-energy neutrinos entering Earth's atmosphere from the depths of space. But a few years ago, ANITA made a strange discovery. It detected neutrinos seemingly originating from beneath the Earth's surface, quite the departure from its intended function of capturing spaceborne neutrinos. One of the more fun hypotheses behind this is that these detected particles may be signs of a possible parallel universe where the fundamental laws of our own universe might operate in complete reverse. Now, this is really just speculative, but it's a pretty fascinating idea. Scientists were pretty perplexed by these findings, and as of right now, there still isn't a definitive explanation. At number 8, we have the Ross Island haunting. Ross Island is not only home to the McMurdo Station, a hub for scientific research, it also harbors something much darker. It's rumored to be haunted. There was a tragic plane crash on the island in 1979, and this crash claimed the lives of 257 people. Over the years, visitors to Ross Island have reported unsettling occurrences describing ghostly footsteps echoing in the icy darkness and mysterious voices that seem to emanate from nowhere. Some claim to have come face to face with full-on apparitions, believing to be the restless spirits of the plane crash victims, wandering the frigid, snow-covered landscape for eternity. The haunting stories surrounding Ross Island have continued to be passed down through generations of Antarctic explorers and researchers. Continuing along with the whole World War II secret base legend, let's talk about the possible destruction of this said German base. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent this huge fleet to Antarctica, and what were they doing? Never been 100% verified, kept mostly secret from the public. So there are those that believe that they'd been tasked with destroying this secret German base. Now, this would have been a pretty easy mission, right? The war was won, base was totally free of any soldiers, just fly on over there and blow it up. Could have definitely been the case, but if we're talking about the fact that maybe there were Germans still there long after the war, then this, would have been a much tougher mission. So, I don't know. Maybe nothing happened. Probably nothing happened. I probably sound incredibly insane right now, but I mean, it's fun to imagine these things, right? Number 6, Lake Vostok. Lake Vostok, hiding beneath Antarctica's icy surface, is a massive subglacial lake that's captured the imagination of scientists and conspiracy theorists for years. It's been locked away for millions of years. It's one of the largest lakes of its kind on Earth. And what's so intriguing about it is, of course, the isolation. What kind of life could be down there? Some scientists speculate about the possibility of discovering new species of fish and other unknown life forms. There have also been strange radar readings that could point to anomalies beneath the ice. The wilder conspiracy theories, of course, involve an ancient civilization of some kind lost under the ice, but no one's drilled all the way through the ice to take a peek. So some say it's because of the risk of maybe contaminating whatever could be down there, seeing as it's been locked away for so long, but others think maybe there's just something they're not telling us, government cover-up type stuff. But what do you think? As always, share your thoughts down in the comments. Next on the list, we have the haunting of Deception Island. Deception Island kind of looks like a frozen hellscape. It used to be the site of several whaling stations that have long since been abandoned. The whaling operations were established in the early 20th century, and a Norwegian-Chilean whaling station named Hector was operational on the island until the Great Depression forced it to close. During World War II, the British established a military presence on Deception Island named Operation Tabarin. The island was a monitoring and control point to counter potential German activity in Antarctica, and after the war, the station was turned over to civilian use for scientific research. Some visitors and researchers have reported strange occurrences and ghostly sightings on the island. One of the most well-known stories is about the British research station called Base B, which operated on the island in the late 1940s. According to the legend, the research station was abandoned abruptly because of unexplained and mysterious incidents. Some versions of the story claim that the researchers started seeing paranormal stuff going on, leading them to flee the station in horror. Number 4, Antarctic Godzilla. That's an intriguing title, isn't it? So it's February 13th, 1958. It's not actually, just imagine. A chilly evening in the Antarctic. The Japanese research vessel Soya Nihongo is cruising along the Lutzow Home Bay, minding its own business. It's 7 p.m. That crew's probably sipping some hot cocoa or whatever they do on research vessels when they're not actually researching. Then, out of nowhere, this colossal sea mammal, or some like to call it the Antarctic Godzilla, decides to make a grand appearance. Fast forward to 1974, off the Latelton Peninsula, another Japanese fishing vessel, probably thinking they were in for a routine day of catching fish, spots a creature that some folks think might be the same beastie encountered back in 58. They call it Kabagon. The creatures were both said to have large eyes and heads with grayish skin. Number 3, Organism 46b. So remember Lake Vostok? Well, this ties into that. Organism 46b is an urban legend centered around a mysterious aquatic creature, allegedly discovered by Russian scientists while drilling in Voltok Lake. The creature is said to be a gelatinous organism, almost like a giant squid, with incredibly deadly venom and the ability to rapidly shapeshift and mimic other marine life. According to the legend, Organism 46b has a unique method of hunting. It can extend a set of thin, flexible filaments from its body to paralyze and then consume its prey. The legend claims that the Russian scientists experimented with Organism 46b, attempting to understand its abilities and potentially weaponize them. These experiments went haywire, resulting in the deaths of several researchers. Then the Russian government covered up the incident. All sounds totally 100% true to me. At second place, we have aliens and UFOs. So there are all kinds of myths and stories, and just people full on believing that Antarctica is teeming with alien life, hidden alien bases buried beneath the ice, crashed UFOs, government experiments involving aliens, the list goes on and on. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL disclosed information to an investigative journalist about a mysterious structure he and his team encountered during a classified mission in August of 2003. According to him, the team discovered a large dark structure protruding from the ice. The structure had doors, which when pushed, revealed a long hallway illuminated by green light, which didn't seem to come from any particular source. The walls inside were adorned with symbols and hieroglyphics that didn't resemble any seen on Earth. The remoteness of Antarctica with its extreme climate does make for the perfect setting for clandestine alien activities. And we're finishing off the list with another ghost story. The ghosts of Sir Robert Scott's tragic expedition. The expedition, officially known as the Terra Nova, expedition aimed to be the first to reach the South Pole. They would unfortunately never return. In 1911, Scott and his team of 25 men departed from Cape Evans, leaving behind the hut that would later become this iconic symbol of their ill-fated journey. The Cape Evans hut was the main hub before the group set off in the main stretch of their journey. The hut, preserved by the extreme cold temperatures of the Antarctic, has become a time capsule of the era. Scientific equipment, personal belongings, even frozen specimens like penguins the group had been studying remain in the same positions that they were right before they left. Despite its frozen state, the hut is not said to be totally devoid of activity. And I'm not talking about staff and stuff like that. Visitors and staff who have entered Scott's hut often report experiencing an eerie and unsettling feeling. Now that's to be expected, but the environment seems to carry this emotional weight, a sense of sadness and emptiness. But it's not just feelings they have. Odd things are said to happen there. Ghostly whispers, sightings of shadowy figures, and objects being found in places where they weren't left before.